Hello everybody, in this lesson I will discuss domain and range. Domain. The domain of a relation is the set of all the x values of the ordered pairs or coordinates. The range of a relation is the set of all the y values of the ordered pairs or coordinates. Then I give you this relation x and y, this is the coordinate, and this is y is equal to 2x, that's the equation. Then I give you x is an element -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3. The ordered pairs are, in other words, we want to find the coordinates. Now do you agree? To find the coordinates, these are the x values. So when you have -2 and you substitute in x's place, the corresponding y value is -4. So there's your first ordered pair or coordinate. Then the next x value here is -1. So into x's place, when we substitute -1, the corresponding y value is -2. Similarly, if you substitute 0, the corresponding y value is 0. When you substitute 1, the corresponding y value is 2. When you substitute 2, the corresponding y value is 4. And when you substitute 3, the corresponding y value is 6. Now we can say the domain used is the set x is an element -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3. In other words, it's all the x coordinates. That's what your domain is. And then your range is the set of the y coordinates. And those are the values we calculated. Therefore, the range will be -4, -2, 0, 2, 4, and 6. Given a set of ordered pairs or coordinates, the domain will be all the x values, -2, 0, 1, and 3, all the x coordinates, and your range will be all the y coordinates, -1, 1, 2, and 4. How to find the domain and range given a graph. For the domain, we use a clear plastic ruler. Keep the edge of the ruler vertical. Slide the ruler across the graph from left to right. Where the edge starts cutting the graph, the domain starts. As we read it off from the x-axis, and you will see that it started at -3. Where it stops cutting the graph, the domain ends, and here it was at +3. So now we can say that the domain is x is an element, -3 included up to 3 included. Or we can say the domain is x is greater or equal to -3 and x is smaller or equal to 3. How to find the range? Keep the edge of the ruler horizontal. Slide the ruler across the graph from bottom to top. Where the edge starts cutting the graph, the range starts, as read off from the y-axis. So here your range started at -4. Where it stops cutting the graph, the range ends, and here on this graph it ended at 5. Therefore we can say the range y is an element -4 included up to 5 included. Or we can write it as the range is y is greater or equal to -4 and y is smaller or equal to 5. Let's look at some examples. Determine the domain and range of the graph. Now, first of all, this graph is discrete. That means it's not continuous. So there's only points on your graph. So therefore, you can only work with the coordinates, the points that was given. So the points are -2 and -1. -1 and 0. 0 and 1, remember x is first, and 1 and 2. Now, to find the domain, you will take the x coordinates. Therefore, the domain will be -2, -1, 0, and 1. And the range, you will find that on the y coordinates, -1, 0, 1, and 2. Now I give you this straight line and the question says determine the domain and range of the graph. Something to note here is that your graph has little arrows at the end. That means your graph carries on and on and on. So for the domain, let's move our ruler horizontally across the graph, and we can see that all the x values will satisfy the graph. Therefore, the domain we say is x is an element real. For the range, we will move our ruler vertically up and down. In fact, we will move the ruler up. So we will start at the bottom, and then you will see it's all the y values that will satisfy the graph. Therefore, the range is y is an element real. Let's do another example. Determine the domain and range of the graph. So for the domain, we will take the purple ruler and slide it horizontally across the half circle. And the first place it touches is -2 up to 2. Therefore, our domain, x is an element -2 included up to 2. Or we can write it as the domain, x is greater or equal to -2 and x is smaller or equal to 2. And then for the range, we will move vertically upwards. So we will start at the bottom, move our ruler up, and therefore we can say that the range is y is an element 0 included up to 2 included. And another way of writing that is for the range, y is greater or equal to 0 and y is smaller or equal to 2. Determine the domain and range of the parabola. So for the domain, let's do the vertical line test. And here you can see that your parabola carries on up to infinity. And that implies that every x value will have a corresponding y value on your graph. So therefore the domain is x is an element real. And then for the range, when we do the horizontal line, then you can see that your graph or your line starts at 1, it cuts 1 first, and then it goes up to infinity. Therefore, your range is y is an element 1 included up to infinity, and remember you can't include infinity. Or you can write it as y is greater or equal to 1. Thank you for watching my video on theory of functions. Remember, there's also playlists on the straight line, parabola, hyperbola, and exponential function.